Well, first of all, I'd like to say marahib, assalamu alaikum, kif kun, shlon kun, ahlen, hi. Uh, these are a few of the greetings you hear in Syria. And here's also a musical greeting or tahiyya composed by Kenan Adanawi and performed by him and others in New York in 2018. Thank you. So we are really honored and greatly moved to be among you. We salute you all, especially those representing indigenous communities in North and South America. We hope you're all healthy and safe. And we also want to thank Together We Remember for this amazing opportunity. I'm Sam Dagher. I'm an author and journalist. I've spent more than 16 years reporting from and on the Middle East and its people. My book on Syria's Assad family, Assad or We Burn the Country, How One Family's Lust for Power Destroyed Syria, came out in paperback 2 weeks ago. I will say something more about the book's title a bit later. I am Lebanese American, but really consider myself a global citizen. I was born and grew up and lived on different continents. I'm usually based in Beirut, Lebanon, but today I'm speaking to you from Dearborn, which is just outside Detroit, Michigan. I'm with Suzanne Meriden in Los Angeles. She's an Angelino Damascene. Suzanne is the executive director of the Syrian American Council. She advocates the U.S. government to drive U.S. Syria policy and support those on the ground in Syria. Suzanne is in constant communication with Syrians inside Syria, and with her amazing warmth, generosity, and persistence, Suzanne connects people with one another. She left a great and promising career, a corporate career in the retail sector, to work full-time on the Syrian cause when the revolution started in 2011. We also have Abdurrahman Al-Mawas. He's joining us from Istanbul. He's the co-founder of the Syrian Civil Defense, also known as the White Helmets. Abdurrahman is from Aleppo. He's originally a mechanical engineer. He responded to the devastation he was witnessing and co-founded a group of local civil defense rescuers in 2013, which eventually became known as the White Helmets. Their mandate really is to help civilians in opposition areas of Syria, besieged by the Syrian regime and its allies, and bombed day and night and denied of their most basic rights. One of the crudest and most horrific weapons that the Syrian regime has used over the years, and here I'd like to warn of some graphic language, is what's known as barrel bombs. These are really drums, like steel drums, filled with explosives, steel rods, shrapnel, and nails. I mean, they're intended to cause maximum damage, inflict maximum damage on their victims. They're dropped from the side of a helicopter on apartment buildings, on schools, on bakeries, on markets, and they're so powerful and lethal that they bring down entire apartment buildings. So the White Helmets would actually go in and first and foremost look for anyone who's alive under the wreckage, left by these barrel bombs. And the White Helmets were nominated for the Nobel Prize in 2016. A documentary on the group's work titled White Helmets won an Oscar in 2017. You can watch it on Netflix. Abdurrahman is also a spokesperson for the group and leads coordination with donors. He spends his time between Istanbul and northern Syria. Last but not least, we have the wonderful Ahad Fusto. Like Abdurrahman, she's from Aleppo. She's joining us today from New York. And like millions of Syrians, Ahad rose up in protest in 2011 to really find her identity and voice, to win her freedom, to break from the fear instilled in generations of Syrians by the regime and its secret police. When the regime turned this peaceful protests into war and killing, I had worked as a paramedic on the front lines. He was also involved in humanitarian relief and with the Aleppo Local Council. These were government bodies set up by citizens in areas that were out of the control of the regime to manage their own day-to-day affairs. She stayed in Eastern Aleppo as much as she could. Eastern Aleppo was controlled by rebels. She was there until November 2015. You have to remember, for the Assad regime, his priority is to eliminate people like Ahad, peaceful protesters, humanitarian workers, doctors and paramedics, and people like Abdurrahman. Those are the regime's enemies. The regime is more than happy to work out deals with armed groups, and they've done that all the time. So I had to leave, and she's now in New York, working as manager of humanitarian relief for the Multifaith Alliance for Syrian refugees. And Ahad is also a member of the Syrian Women's Political Movement. So we're going to talk a little bit now. We're going to take turns to talk a little bit about how and why we got involved in our work as it relates to the situation in Syria. And I'm going to go first, and then we're going to take turns to talk about that. I wanted to make sure that the truth of what really happened in Syria was not falsified. I did not want history to repeat itself. And here, as I speak, we can look at some slides. So the Assads have been ruling Syria for half a century. They've outlasted 8 U.S. presidents since Richard Nixon. And basically something very similar to what happened under the father, something similar to what happened now, the past decade, happened under the father, Hafez al-Assad. People rose up in the 70s to demand freedom, but they were accused of being terrorists. Tens of thousands perished in a desert prison and tortured dungeons all over Syria, and in military campaigns, culminating in a horrific massacre in 1982 in the city of Hama, in which at least 30,000, mostly civilians, perished. Many remain missing until this day from this dark period. Hafez went on to rule Syria. He was a partner of the West, of Western governments at some point, and Syrians were traumatized for decades. Few in the West remember or even know this, but the Assad family for sure remembered that it had to do anything and has to do anything to remain in power, even if it means killing its own people and destroying the country. It is their motto, and it's distilled in this slogan, Assad or we burn the country. That's the title of my book, and that's actually their own slogan. And it's also the graffiti that the Assad militiamen spray on the towns and villages that they reclaimed from the opposition over the past decade. And graffiti is how this conflict started. It was a group of school children in the southern city of Daraa who sprayed graffiti on the walls against the regime. It was in the spirit of the Arab Spring revolutions, which had started. But the regime decided to go after peaceful protesters first and hardest. Then, it became war and conflict. The regime wanted to starve and bomb people into submission. The regime used chemical weapons on a wide scale. killing over the past decade, killing thousands of Syrians. Um, the death toll is 400,000, but that's from back in 2016. I mean, the world has stopped counting, but the killing continues. The war is not over. There are 7 million Syrian refugees scattered all over the world, half of them in Turkey, another 6 million displaced internally. It's far from over. We have almost 4 million people squeezed in the last rebel-held enclave, the province of Idlib in northwest Syria, and the regime and its allies are determined to get it back. And you may have seen the images of people fleeing as the regime and its allies were approaching earlier this year. Abdurrahman may say more about Idlib. So really, now, as far as Western governments are concerned, they've made the choice. It's to them, they would rather have Bashar al-Assad rather than see ISIS or other extremist groups rule Syria. But they forget that it is actually the Assad family and regimes like the Assad regime that create the monsters, the beasts, the extremists like ISIS. The Assad family has a long history of sponsoring terrorism in Iraq, in Lebanon, and in the context of the Arab-Israeli conflict. But Syrians are not giving up. They know that justice and accountability is the first and real step towards healing, peace, and reconciliation in Syria. And we saw a historic moment last week in Germany when two officers from the security services, former officers in security services, were brought to a trial that opened in Germany for crimes against humanity. It's the first step. The German law allows for these types of cases to be brought in Germany because other avenues for justice are closed. The Syrians can't take it to the International Criminal Court because that requires a referral from the Security Council, and so far Russia and China are blocking that. So I'd like to leave you with a video. This is a video I shot in Homs in 2014. Homs reverted to the regime after 3 years of killing and bombing and a siege that prevented food and medicine from going into Homs. So the regime and its allies took back a deserted and destroyed Homs city. So here I'm following one resident of this area who was able to go back in. So you could just hear the sound of the birds. So I'll leave you for a couple of minutes to watch the video. Thank you very much. I mean, you saw there was nobody there except a deserted, destroyed city that once was home to almost 1 million people, and you can just hear the birds. Now over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you for hosting us, and it feels amazing to be here with Ahad and Abdulrahman. And thank you to Together We Remember for giving us the space and time to tell our story. I got involved in Syria and with the Syrian revolution for my parents, for my father. Today I understand my father so much more because of the revolution than I ever did, and why he acted a certain way or did certain behaviors. But um, I was born in the US and lived in many other places except for Syria, but I always spent summers in Syria, and that's where we had family reunions and had amazing times with cousins, and we'd get together and laugh, and just life was beautiful. And little did I know that on the same streets in Damascus where we would walk and laugh and play, that beneath our feet and beneath the cement, there were dungeons where people were being tortured, innocent people who were taken by the regime and being tortured. And this is a true story told by prisoners, that they would be down there being tortured and just listening to um, the cars on top of them driving by. And so you can imagine what that must feel like. And I would hear certain things when I would visit, especially in my adult years and my college years, that, the regime did certain things, and officials did whatever they wanted, and they got whatever they wanted at whatever cost of the people. And I refused to believe it, I guess I could say, because no one would believe such things. And I didn't know better. And then as the Arab Spring started rolling by and I was older and understood more and more mature, then it all sort of became real. And when the Arab Spring started, a lot of the conversations between my friends and I was, is it really going to happen in Syria? Is the Arab Spring going to come to Syria? And many thought, no, it never would. The regime is too harsh there. People would be too scared. But sure enough, it happened. And it was amazing to see it happen. And I just found myself being drawn to it. I mean, I had been an activist here and there, but never fully. I had a career in corporate retail, but I was so drawn to it, and especially because I was in Los Angeles and the Syrian American Council had a chapter there. I was drawn to the people there. They started holding protests and having activities right at the start of the revolution, and my heart went all in. And so I found myself actually in my corporate career, I would be in meetings and talk to my teams and staff, and then I would just want to run to my desk and get on my phone and scroll. And I was constantly looking, did the regime fall? Did the revolution get to where it wanted to be? And that's where my head was. And honestly, I had to make the honorable decision to truly quit my job before they fired me, because my head was fully in the revolution. And I quit and I joined the chapter in Los Angeles, volunteered for a couple of years, and then went to DC and began working in DC with the Syrian American Council. And here I was suddenly thrown into a whole different world, a whole different career, lobbying and advocating for Syria, and advocating for heroes like Ahad and Abdulrahman, and people who put their lives in danger so that the Syrian people can find freedom one day. And so, of course, it was a whole different life. I was thrown into a world of being on the Hill in Congress and at the White House and with state, with incredible people, with volunteers, with members, with other Syrian American organizations and other organizations, and just working just a whole different life. We were in meetings advocating for things like the Caesar bill, which became law, and I'll talk about that in a second. We were advocating for resolutions on chemical attacks, which I'll also come to in just a second. But it was just, life became life before the revolution and life after the revolution started. And I wonder sometimes what life was even like before the Arab Spring and the revolution, and what an amazing feat this was, and that we will see it through to the very end for the people and for what they've had to suffer. and that's where I kind of said I did it for my parents and for my father. I would remember my father just being so, you know, angry, and he'd be so afraid of the government, even in the U.S. And he loved the U.S. And I always wondered why. You know, he did everything to the T, everything by the book, and I'd wonder why he was afraid of Uncle Sam. He'd always talk about Uncle Sam, and then I understood why. I saw, you know, he grew up in a place where you feared the government. You couldn't be yourself. You couldn't speak about the government. You couldn't speak up about anything. And I understood him, and I needed to do this for him and for the Syrian people. And so part of my work then became, like I said, being on the Hill, advocating for things like the Caesar bill. Caesar was a photographer actually hired by the Assad regime to document and take photos of the people that the regime tortured and killed. And they were incredibly difficult photos to see and look at, but they were important photos because those photos were actually brought to the United States. And Caesar himself, Caesar was his alias name, of course. Out of fear, he had to uh, come under alias. We never saw his face. Even when he was on the Hill, always protected. And through different works from the organization and community, he had meetings with Congress members and meetings at the White House and at the State Department, and showed those photos. And because of that, some great people on the Hill came together and said, let's write a bill where it would implicate anybody that was involved with the regime, whether they're individuals or networks. And so after years of work, 4 or 5 years from the very beginning, to a lot of advocacy, including grassroots advocacy, etc., that law was signed into bill at the turn of the year. And that is a huge, huge accomplishment, and something we hope will be implemented very soon here, so we can start seeing people come to justice, in addition to other things like Sam mentioned, accountability in Germany and other states, etc. Other work we did, for instance, we worked on resolutions for chemical attacks. Sam talked about the barrel bombs being one weapon that the regime used. Another weapon was chemical attacks. Areas and villages and cities would be put under extreme limit, under extreme, nothing could come in, nothing could come out, and then people would be stuck in one area, and then chemicals would be used against them. So you had children that were dying, foaming at the mouth, falling from these gases, adults, so many deaths, so many lost children to those chemical attacks, and just unbelievable atrocities that the regime was committing, and still today is committing, actually. And so that work also, besides advocating for these types of resolutions and bills, in order to get to achieve that work, I really had to work with the community along with my team. And that was my favorite part of the work, because you were working with the community that was, that went through these difficult years under the Assad regime of not being able to advocate or speak up. So that was actually one of our biggest challenges, is getting people to believe that they actually could go and meet with their representatives, that they had a right to go speak and to ask for something. We even, at one point, we were asking people what the Arabic word for advocacy was, and truly, even the best of speakers couldn't figure it out. There wasn't such a word. Finally, we figured out it's munasara, and we use it now, and we're proud of it. But to that extent, people just didn't know how to say advocacy because it didn't exist. And still till today, people wonder if advocacy works. But thank goodness, because of things like the Caesar law, etc., we have been able to show that, if you're persistent, if you speak up, you can actually achieve things and get to where you need to get.
Thank you, Suzanne. And let's talk more about this towards the end of our segment. I just wanted to share with participants some photos that depict some of the atrocities that you just described. And I warn everyone that there are some graphic images here. One of them is one of the Caesar photos, I believe, and the other one was the aftermath of the Ghouta chemical weapons attack. So we're just going to share these photos very quickly. This is from this is one of the Caesar photos. Again, these are graphic images. I'm warning everyone. And this is from the aftermath of the Ghouta chemical weapons attack, I believe, in 2013. And this is just like the destruction we saw in Homs. I mean, this happened in almost every town and village that dared to challenge the regime. But you also have some photos of hope, I believe, from Idlib, which I just described as the last area outside of regime control. There are almost 4 million people living in Idlib. These are people displaced from other cities and towns that were reclaimed by the regime. And this is Ramadan, the month of fasting and prayers, which has started. And this is in Idlib, people trying to, go on with life as much as they can. So this gives us some hope. This is from Idlib. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Abdurrahman in Istanbul. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Sam, and thanks for all from our staff from Together We Remember for hosting and give a chance to tell the people our stories and Syrian stories. As you mentioned, I'm a mechanical engineer. I graduated from the university at the end of 2010. After that, in 2011, the revolution it started in Syria. And after about months, many of Syrian people, there were between many choices, but at the least between two choices and two ways, even to join to the people and stand with them against the regime, that the regime start killed people and start to using the war machines like helicopters and like bombardments, any bombardments and artillery from surface to surface. So as many of Syrians, I tried to belong to those people and defense and do something. After that, about in 2012, the crime it's increased and the war it's increased, the bombardment, especially on the civilian homes, what was very targeted and very not aimed, just killing people. So I was also between two choices here, even to carry a weapon, and that was the easy choice, or to going and work as a civilian to helping people. And I was lucky because my friends and I together just trying to create something it's called civil defense. As a Syrian, we just know the civil defense, it's apart from military. That's what we used to. In the Syrian regime and Syrian government, the civil defense, it's part of military and it's care about not rescue, maybe just save lives of the military. So we tried to do something for the civilians, trying to going where the bombardment, where the people escape. And we succeed to establish the first center, first station inside Eastern Aleppo city. And then it was 4 stations. We tried to going to search and rescue people with our hands and our basic tools. Then after that, the people, they notice us and they start to support us and to make something to help these people. So we were trained and we trying to involved in the civil society inside Aleppo city, and then we creating the whole organization, so the White Helmets or the civil defense. Now we are maybe the big or the only organization working or save lives. This is like about braving our starting. I know you told me maybe I will focus on myself more than the organization, but I couldn't because I feel our real life it's a start in 2011 when we decided where we go. And in this moment, we feel we are alive. The old life, it was maybe just like normal one or not useful. We haven't seen any benefits from this. Now maybe we are losing a lot of our friends, a lot of our colleagues, but maybe we feel we able to make something it will remember from the history. I will focus more than about white helmets, about the war, but maybe if you see the video, the next video about the miracle baby, it will speak from the beginning how we start and how we were able to make the fathers or mothers smile when they say their sons from the underground.
Thank you. And again, a warning that there are some graphic images in this video. Just a warning to everyone. And if we can show the video now.
في أحد الأيام تعرضت منطقة الأنصاري لقصف بالبراميل المتفجرة. حصلنا نطالع العيلة الأولى والعيلة الثانية. العيلة الثالثة هي الأم والولد. هي فعلاً يعني الأم كانت كثير منفعلة، عندها كثير كانت عصبية وكانت عم تصيح، يعني هي خايفة على حالها أو خايفة على ابنها. بعد الحفل الطويل حصلنا نسمع صوت الولد، صوت صار يبكي الولد، حصلنا نسمع صوته وكان كثير محل صعب. بعد ما وصلنا لولد هون صار الشغل كثير بده حذر، يعني هذا ولد عمره أسبوعين أو أكثر، بأي لحظة بيطب شي فوقه أو بيموت أو بيختنق. هلا 12 ساعة طبعاً هي ما هي كلمة الآن، يعني عمل كثير حذر، يعني هي روح بدك تتعامل معها بشكل خطير جداً. يعني إنه طفل عمره أسبوعين يطب فوقه برميل أو 3 سقوف ما يسيبوا شيء، يعني وكل هالضغوطات انه هذا الطفل يطلع اقوى من البراميل واقوى من السقوف واقوى من كل شيء.
هذا اعجازه يا رب يا الله تبارك اسمك. امه وينه؟ عدي امك الماء يا رب. شوي شوي خالد عليك يا خالد. يا الله يا رب هو فتحوني هيك. ثواني ابيسك ثواني عيسى يا افيه.
زرتوا الولد بعد ما انقذتوه؟
ما عندنا وقت، قالوا له قصف قصف قصف.
Incredible, incredible. I mean, just think about it. This scene repeated itself tens of thousands of times in Syria, but not everybody was lucky as that newborn there. So now I'd like to pass it over to Ahed Fusto in New York. It's all yours, Ahed. Thank you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you so much for Together We Remember for giving us the space to share our stories. And thank you, Sam, for organizing everything. I'm very grateful to be here today with Abdulrahman and with Susan and with you too. From where I should start? I think, as Abdulrahman said, our life before 2011 was really meaningless. I used to hear from our relatives in Lebanon about like freedom and human rights and dignity and these like idioms we never really used in Syria. As Susan mentioned, we were struggling to find really advocacy in Arabic because we don't really have such a word. And yeah, I felt like we all, I hate to say this, but I felt like we all animals in the Syrian regime farm, which is our country. We did not have ownership for our country. I didn't really like Syria. I mean, I love Aleppo. I love Syria as like a city, but I didn't feel that I belong there. So in 2011, actually a little bit before, when the Arab Spring started, I was watching Tahrir Square and just crying and couldn't really believe one day we might have something like that. But yeah, the things was happening in Egypt started to be real in Syria. And the minute we felt like, yeah, there is a hope to start in Syria. So yeah, I started with other friends. Our group was, we used to call ourselves as like flowers. So we started to organize peaceful demonstrations. We started to tell the people of Aleppo what it means to show up in the street. Actually, the first demonstration that I was in, I was just crying and yelling. Like, this is the first time in my life I walk in the street and I speak up, and I speak against the Syrian regime. In the beginning, we didn't really say anything that really clear against the regime. We were asking for some kind of changing the system and kind of fixing the civil society rule, and we were asking just for our dignity. And when the Syrian regime started to kill us and arrested us, the Syrian regime who started to escalate the peaceful revolution by killing us one by one and arresting us. And if they really went to some homes and they didn't find the person who they were asking for, they will arrest their families, their relatives. It doesn't matter. They just want us to be in fear all the time because that we dared to go out and to speak up. Yeah, that was to me the beginning. Why I continued, because I lost so many friends, and some of my friends were arrested because they were participating in the peaceful demonstrations, and actually some of them were killed. There was 3 doctors of our group who were arrested just because they were having this backpack on their back and going with us in the street and give us first aid if we got shot or something. They were arrested and burned to death. And actually, after they throw them in the park, we saw that they've been tortured before burning them. So yeah, a lot of people, they don't really know this stories, but in Syria, it was like a huge thing to see that. And yeah, I just felt like there is no way going back, and I'm going to keep moving forward with this, with other friends. And it just like, I started actually recently to think about that when we are like quarantined here, especially about myself. I'm sitting here in this like beautiful space, in really safe space, and having everything I want. I can really order online anything I want, but yet I still complaining, oh, I'm sitting, I can't go out. And we don't really think about people who've been arrested and who've been in prison for more than 10 years, and they don't really know until which end, which end is waiting for them. They might not going out at all. They might get killed there. So yeah, these facts, I feel like not really clear to everyone, and it should be, and we should really shed the light on this topic whenever chance we have, because those people who are stuck in the Syrian regime present, they are people, and the things that keep them alive, it's the hope of going out one day, and we should really be their voices. Yeah.
Incredible, Ahad.
Anything?
Yeah, I mean, really incredible. I mean, just your words are so powerful. I mean, we wanted to actually to share with everyone a song by Dylan Connor paying tribute to Ghayath Matar, who was, like many brave Syrians, rose up to protest peacefully against this regime. He's from the town of Daraya near Damascus. And what's incredible about Ghayath and his friends from Daraya is they used to hand out roses and bottles of water to the soldiers that were sent by the Assad regime to Daraya to actually kill them, to shoot and kill at protesters. And Dylan Connor pays tribute to Ghayath in this song for a documentary titled The Little Gandhi, because that was the nickname of Ghayath Matar. He was called by his friends and colleagues the Little Gandhi because of his peaceful methods. He was arrested in the summer of 2011, so a few months into the uprising, and then he was tortured, and there's some graphic language here. He was tortured, and his mutilated corpse was returned to his family as a warning to that community and to peaceful protesters everywhere. This is what's going to happen to you if you dare to challenge this regime. And I'm just going to ask our colleagues here to play the video of the song.
Rias, Rias, I will march next to you. Rias, Rias, in your revolution so true. Rias, Rias, where there was fear you broke through and believed our country could be born anew. Rias, Rias, you set the place and the hour. Rias, Rias, you met the soldiers with flowers. Rias, Rias, you brought water to the drought. You quenched our thirst and washed away the doubts. The man of peace who opened the door. The man of peace who was still marching for. The man of peace heart was so pure. We were lost on the ocean, but you brought us to shore. Rias, Rias, you did not die in vain. Rias, Rias, we will carry your flame. Rias, we won't stop until the lion is tame. And the stars above are forever singing your name. The man of peace who opened the door. The man of peace who we're still marching for. The man of peace whose heart was so pure. We were lost on the ocean, but you brought us to shore. Your compassion was more dangerous than rage. They stole you away and locked you up in a cage. The way they killed you was vile and depraved, and their crimes will follow them beyond the grave. The man of peace
So thank you. I mean, this is, I think, a tribute not only to Ghiath, but to everyone around the world who had to pay the ultimate price to fight for what they believe in. And I just want to take maybe 5 minutes to just very quickly to discuss amongst us, you know, what never again means to each one of us, and also what perhaps gives us the most fear, and also what gives us the most hope. I mean, for me, very quickly, never again makes me think of the complete and total failure of the multilateral infrastructure that was put in place after World War II, the UN and other multilateral bodies and the International Criminal Court that were intended to ensure that we have never again. And it completely and utterly failed in Syria. And I saw that with my own eyes. So that's what I think of when never again is mentioned. And also, I think what gives me the most fear is perhaps seeing this impunity, you know, that the regime and its backers continue to enjoy so far. It makes me very, very scared for all of us, for our future, because it sends a message to dictators and human rights abusers everywhere, that it's okay to do whatever you want, to kill your people, to gas your people, and no one's going to come after you. So this continued impunity that we see in Syria really terrifies me. But what gives me hope is, you know, what the young Syrians are doing in Europe at the moment, particularly in Germany, France, and elsewhere, to actually have justice and accountability. You have to remember, I mean, these countries, Germany, yes, they're hosting Syrian refugees, but they are not interested in pursuing these cases themselves. It's actually the efforts of those brave Syrians and their allies in Germany, lawyers, German lawyers and human rights advocates, who are working tirelessly for the past few years to bring these cases under you know, what's known as universal jurisdictions in German courts. So that really gives me great hope. I mean, I was crying last week when the trial opened in Germany. So I want to ask you, Suzanne, what never again means to you, and what gives you fear, and most importantly, what gives you hope?
You know, I'm very similar to you, Sam, and that never again was scary at one point, because we are seeing it again. But even just being here in this program today gives me the hope that, you know what, we will get somewhere. There are people who are accepting us in their space. They're helping us tell our story. And so we will get to that day where there really is a never again. As far as my fears, same fears as you, just seeing things happen and the world not giving it the time and attention it needs to help stop it just because it's in one corner in Syria. But the hope is, you know, those pictures we showed with people preparing for Ramadan, that even under the destruction and the misery and the death, they're still living, they're still out there rioting and asking for freedom today after 9 years. That to me is the hope. And so I look forward to seeing them and seeing us help them get through it and get to freedom.
Yeah. How about, I mean, I'll move over to you. What does never again mean to you, and what gives you the most fear, and most importantly, what gives you the most hope in the Syrian context?
So yeah, never again. It meant really something when we started, when I thought the international community will act for us. And then when they started to say, no, you can't use really chemical weapon, when they started to say this to the Syrian regime, and then the Syrian regime started to use the chemical weapon over and over, and no one stopped him or stopped this terrorizing uh, uh, terrorizing system that being used on us. I felt like never again, it's just a big lie. I'm sorry to say that, but yeah, I remember this night when my friend and I waiting in Aleppo and feeling like, oh, there is a hope that the American troops are moving to act against the Syrian regime. We waited for a very long, and then we fall asleep. Next day when we woke up, nothing really happened, and we were like, oh wow, like it means means really green light. to the Syrian regime to keep the atrocity. And last, I feel the hope. I started to see it here when I came here, and I started to see the the, the Americans and how they are trying really to help, regardless of their governments, but how, like with their own capacity, they are trying to help and to advocate for us. And yeah, I think this is what it gives me hope. And sometimes I feel if they are really like without really feeling tired of helping us, we shouldn't really stop and we shouldn't give up.
Wonderful. And I think you all agree that just being here today, this morning, being part of this global vigil gives us all great hope. With that, I'll pass it over to Abdurrahman for a few words on that.
Actually, never again leads my mind directly to the red lines. In Syria, we heard many times about red lines. First time in 2013 from Obama, when he said the chemical weapons, it will be red line. We will kill Assad if he used the chemical weapons. Then Bashar al-Assad used the chemical weapons, killed more than 1,500 in one night without any voice, just with chemical. And maybe more than 1,000 of them were children. After that, in 2016, when Eastern Aleppo was under siege, we meet as a delegation from Aleppo city with Mr. Francois Hollande, the French president at this time. And also he said, Aleppo, it's red line. And it will be, there is no solution with al-Assad. Al-Assad has gone. After that, Francois Hollande has gone and al-Assad is still in his position. Also the same what's happened with Adel Jubeir, his Foreign Affairs Saudi Arabian minister. Also he said the same. And we heard many times about the red lines from the UN, from the Security Council, from the big 5 countries, but unfortunately, we haven't seen anything. All of them changed, all of them end for their period, for the president or something, but Bashar al-Assad is still in his position. So I hope never again what will mean to the people, but for us, we really feel disappointed from the Security Council and international community.
Sorry, go ahead.
The most fair about me when I'm thinking about my dad and mom and the people like Ahad, like me, why we cannot go for our homes and why we see other people play with our memories in our homes, in our neighborhoods. What would did to see them playing with all this history and we cannot go to our homes, our lands? What is the reason? This is fair me. Maybe the most hope, and that's come like we say in the video in the miracle baby, the man who carried the baby. This baby now he is in Turkey in refugees camp. He is old about 5 years. Unfortunately, the man he's killed in Syria after 1 year about his risk this baby. But this baby give us hope, and we have the faith and we have the hope. Al-Assad, it will not continue for the ever. And one day it will come and the justice and the accountability will be in Syria.
Wow, these are really powerful words, Abdurrahman. Thank you very much. So we just want to thank everyone for making us part of this, and we just want to leave you with this with these words. I mean, get to know our story, the real story of Syria and Syrians, because knowledge is power, and knowledge is what spurs us to action to make a difference.
And we're going to give you 2 very easy ways to get to know our stories. Definitely read Sam Dagher's book, Assad or We Burned the Country. It really is. It was named one of the best nonfiction books of 2019. A very good read that tells you exactly what happened. And the other thing is watch the For Sema film. It was one of the 2 Syrian documentaries nominated for an Oscar this year, a wonderful film about a mother filming, actually. She filmed the movie to tell her daughter why the revolution started. They're both perfect for quarantine time.
I just want to ask you to share our stories, tell others, spread the word with Syrian stories, and what will you see in the film and the book?
I just want to end with, please, when you want to donate for local organizations. donate for organization you know they are working on the ground, like the White Helmet, like other organization. But don't donate. I'm not going to say don't donate to the UN, even though I said it. Yeah, try to donate for when you want really to donate and help Syrians. Donate to the people who are working on the ground. This is the most important thing. And you have to make sure that your money is going to the right side and the right people. And thank you so much for everything.
Thank you. That was a really challenging session for me to listen to, and it's supposed to be that way. And I'm really grateful that we had the opportunity, especially here in the United States, in the middle of our day, or the middle of our morning. I don't know what time it is anymore. I've been up for a little while. In the middle of my day, in the last 24 hours, just very grateful for that conversation. And we will do everything that we can to continue to provide space for Syrians fighting for justice and for freedom. So thank you so much for coming today, and please let us know what else we can do. Thank you, Sam, for convening such a wonderful panel in a matter of days. And thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.